My name is Shayla Smith, and I am going to be giving my speech on sexual education programs in school, and I think they're very important. Would you like your kids to ask personal questions to their friends about sexual education instead of getting truthful information from yourself? I didn't think so. Before I came to BYU, Idaho, I was majoring in health education. The studies and statistics we were able to research were outstanding. In this speech, I will let you know the benefits and negatives of why sexual education is beneficial to be taught to teens in school. I will also give you solutions for what you can do at home to help your kids feel like they can talk to you without getting embarrassed. It's a big thing. By being educated on the matter and with the tips I give you, your children will feel comfortable and it will allow them the environment to be informed and educated on the matter and the things you discuss. So first, let's talk about some of the risks your children will face if they're not educated on this matter. Let's look at the statistics. Teens who receive a comprehensive education about sex are about 50% less likely to have an unintended pregnancy than those who receive sex education that are abstinence-only or contraceptive-only programs. Virginity pledges are promises to abstain from sexual intercourse until marriage and have become popular courses of action for sex education programs across America. The rates are so high that this is really the only true and sure way to be safe from getting pregnant and getting STIs and STDs, which are sexually transmitted diseases or infections. Unfortunately, studies show that their pledgers are just as likely as non-pledgers to have STDs and less likely to use contraception if they do become sexually active. Emergency contraception, such as the morning after pill, prevented 51,000 abortions in 2000. That is crazy. 51,000 just by using the morning after pill. So why is sexual education taught in schools? A 2011 Centers for Disease Control and Prevention survey indicates that more than 47% of all high school students say they have had sex, and 15% of high school students have had sex with 4 or more partners during their lifetime. Among students who had sex in 3 months prior to the survey, 60% reported condom use and 23% reported birth control pill use during their last sexual encounter. Sexual activity does have consequences. Though the teen birth rate has declined to its lowest level since data collection began in the United States, it still has the highest teen birth rate in the industrialized world. So we're still very high. America, I know that we feel like we're very educated on the matter, and even these countries such as Africa and Germany and places like that, we're still the most high in the industrialized world, so that's a lot. 3 in 10 girls will be pregnant at least once before their 20th birthday. So if you can think of 3 of your friends, I'm sure you at least know one who's pregnant, if you yourself are not pregnant by now. But we're married, so that's fine. Teenage mothers are less likely to finish high school and are more likely than their peers to live in poverty, depend on public assistance, and be poor in health. Their children are more likely to suffer health and cognitive disadvantages, come in contact with the child welfare and correctional systems, live in poverty, drop out of high school, and then they become teen mothers themselves. These costs definitely add up. And according to the National Campaign to Prevent Teen and Unplanned Pregnancy, which estimates that teen childbearing costs taxpayers at least $10.9 billion annually. So every year we pay $10.9 billion of our taxes to those who have unplanned pregnancy and just aren't able to pay for it. Adolescents are disproportionately affected by sexually transmitted infections or STIs. Young people ages 15 to 24 represent 25% of the sexually active population, but acquire half of all new STIs, which amounts to 9.8 million new cases a year. About 3.2 million adolescent females are infected with at least one of the most common STIs. And the most common is the human papillomavirus, and that's the most common among teens. Some estimates find that up to 35% of teens ages 14 to 19 have HPV, or the human papillomavirus. So it's a lot. And girls ages 15 to 19 have the highest rates of gonorrhea and the second highest rates of chlamydia of any age group. So they're still very young to have those diseases. Young males do get STIs, even though they're not as common, but their infections are often undiagnosed and unreported because they're less likely to have symptoms, and then they don't really seek medical help like girls will when they have these kind of infections or diseases and they suffer from those symptoms. So let's talk about the facts on American Teen source of information about sex. A lot of young girls have sex and then they get pregnant and then they have abortions. And that's just the ongoing act of it all because they're not very well educated. So when they're not educated, they go and have sex and they don't use any kind of protection, and then they end up getting pregnant, and many of them are just young girls, and they don't have a firm relationship with the father of the child, and he's still in high school or middle school himself and isn't able to provide for the child, and so a lot of them end up getting abortions because they're too young, or they can't afford it, or they just aren't ready for a child yet. So it's an ongoing act, and it's just really sad. So I feel like if we were able to educate all these kids in schools, that they'd be able to get educated on the matter and at least protect themselves if they are going to take part in that. So the Teens Report of Formal Sex Education, there's a lot of schools that are not willing to teach sexual education programs. Um, a lot of parents have problems with this sometimes because they would rather tell them themselves than have anybody from the school. I know when I was in middle school, my mom took me out of some of those classes because she didn't know what they were telling me, and she would rather just tell me herself, so she knew that I knew what was right. Schools have to go through so many procedures. Sometimes they have to get permission slips and send them home for their kids to be able to participate in those. They have to hire people from around the states to come in and teach their classrooms about it, and hopefully it sticks. But it's just a lot of pressure on the school. So with the schools, a lot of times they won't do it, but if they do it, they'll do it in health classes, and I think that's a great way for kids to open up and really come out and ask questions. And if they don't want to ask questions, then at least they're being talked to about it, and so they are well informed on it. To wrap things up here, I just want you to remember that your children will be well informed on the matter if you teach them and are educating them, so they can prevent early pregnancy and so they won't have to deal with the STIs and STDs and the other things that are out there. There are rising statistics of AIDS, HIV, and other sexual diseases in our growing generation. Many teens are turning to their friends to get information, or somebody who's close to them, and it can be false. By having an open classroom where it is taught and openly discussed, they will have the right information. This will prepare the children to open up and ask questions to the right and knowledgeable person so that they can be well informed. Now tell me that after hearing these facts and statistics, that you wouldn't like your child in school to inform them on the rights and wrongs so that they can prevent all these terrible diseases, infections, and so they can have a happily ever after with their new family when they're old enough and in the right spot.